segment is on actually Stoic Week, and this is something that Rebecka already mentioned in her introduction. So there is this organization called Modern Stoicism. They're based in UK, and they have classicists, psychologists, cognitive therapists together, and they're trying to actually apply Stoicism as a way of living to modern life, to modern conditions. So once a year there's this online program that lasts for a week that takes you through a series of exercises. Each day there are exercises in the morning and in the evening that reconstruct pretty well what we can get not only from Seneca but other authors as well, Marcus Aurelius in particular, but Epictetus as well. And so this year the dates for the Stoic Week are actually November, so it starts on November 6th and it will run until November 12 or 13. This group here actually tried to do it before the actual event with the materials I gather Rebecka provided, and so we are going to ask them what did it feel like to live like a Stoic for a week. Maybe just tell us briefly their name and what attracted them to actually trying this, and then share with us some of the most important experiences that they had in the course of the week, or as long as you actually try to do it. So we'll start maybe from this side and invite you to start us off.
Good evening, everyone. I am Shreya Pandey, and I am a sophomore pursuing computer engineering here at UC. And I came across the idea of Stoicism while I was browsing on the internet, like most of us, and yeah, that led me to reading Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and that's how I got introduced to the idea of Stoicism. And I have some notes. I observed that it is relatively easy to embody kindness, uphold the principle of virtue when circumstances align in our favor. You might have noticed that it is much easier to be nice and kind to people, empathize with others, become a better human in general when we are having a good day, but much harder to do so when cards are stacked against us. And we all know that not every day is going to be favorable. And I found Stoicism to be especially helpful in those kind of days. It teaches us to maintain that sense of integrity and inner peace in face of adversity. There were two things that stuck out to me the most. The first one was conscious response. The first exercise in our experiment emphasized examining the emotions. One of the things that I tried to execute was seeing emotions as information and observing them from a distance rather than reacting to them. When faced with emotional challenges like anger, overwhelm, or anxiety, I made conscious decision to pause and choose a response rather than making impulsive decision. This approach significantly reduced the likelihood of escalating into conflict both internally and externally. For instance, if I felt angry, I would pause, allowing me to understand the perspective of the other person I'm angry at. This shift from judgment to curiosity enabled me to empathize better with others, and sometimes even myself, and regain a sense of peace. The second thing was resilience and dichotomy of control and acceptance. On the second day of the experiment, we explored the idea of resilience. To be resilient, one must understand dichotomy of control and acceptance, which is deeply rooted in Stoic philosophy. This involves accepting what cannot be changed, focusing on what is within our control, and letting go of the rest. To practice this, we contemplated negative scenarios and discerned what could and could not be controlled. While carrying out this exercise, I felt more prepared for what was to come and less overwhelmed throughout the day. I came across this profound concept of amor fati, which is Latin phrase for love of fate. It describes an attitude of resolute and enthusiastic acceptance of everything that life has to offer, both good and bad. Realistically, we are always at mercy of life. We can either fight it or accept it. And realizing this definitely did not solve my problem, but it gave me courage to face them with composure. Those were my biggest takeaway throughout this week, and I intend to carry them moving forward. They serve not only as a compass for navigating the complexities of life with wisdom and grace, but also pillars of well-lived life. Thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. We can maybe move on, and then we'll have some concluding remarks on everyone, because I suspect there will be a lot of really kind of maybe themes and motifs that we want to address together. So
my name is Justin Dooley. I'm a classical civ / Elegy major here at UC. What attracted me to Stoicism? An excellent question. I guess pretty much I just saw the email saying, hey, we're having this event based on Seneca, and I said, why not, right? What's the harm? It's just a week, right? But yeah, like most of what you said, it's very eye-opening. Like realizing what is in and not, what is in your control and not, really helps to, I guess, facilitate your response. Which, being a kind of emotional person already, I found very useful, both for someone with an anxiety disorder and just as a human being in general.
Hello everyone, my name is Shuta Maino. I'm a fourth-year philosophy student. I guess what attracted me to Stoicism was maybe it was early on in high school. I did Latin in high school, and we translated passages of Marcus Aurelius' meditations. So that probably was maybe one of the key inflection points that made me interested in Stoicism. Like my colleagues have already said, I think some of the themes that we've exercised this past week were really interesting. For me, I think the most important takeaway was this deep-seated introspection required to be a Stoic. And so creating a space that maybe emotional responses might be, a negative emotion might come up, but creating the space to understand that, to reflect upon that, I think was really fruitful and important to me. I also think that's maybe we need more of that in our world, that it's important to see people's actions from a greater perspective, and maybe if we can act on that to be more kind to each other.
thank you.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Michael Schoen. I'm a third-year classicist, and for me, the explanation perhaps is rather simple and straightforward as to why I took advantage of this opportunity to join this panel. Namely, 2 years ago, what was my first semester here at UC, I was in a class, Latin 4003 perhaps, something like that, epistolography, right? So we read many of the epistolae morales, and the moral letters of Seneca. So I had somewhat of a background in the concepts and the notions, and I did certainly take the time to read back through some of my notes and the paper from that class. I said that I was a classicist, but it's not my sole major. I also study mathematics, and every mathematician, undergraduate mathematician, when you reach a certain level, 3001 has to begin writing proofs. And the cliche of when you're writing a proof is that the first thing you need to do is you need to define your variables. You need to define what you're using, you need to quantify them, you need to show which set to which they belong, the integers, the rationals, etc. And I find a great tie between this and the principles of Stoicism. The key to perceiving life from the perspective of a Stoicist, from the perspective of Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, and others, is to look back and quantify the experiences which you are seeing. What do they belong to? For example, on the third day we were asked to prioritize our our various values and various desires that we might have in life. We were asked to split them into 3 categories. Number 1, what is essential for me being a good person? What would be perhaps propitious to being a good person? And what is morally neutral? That's so essential, I think, in our day, in which so much of thought and public discourse, I think, seems to struggle with thinking about what is fundamental, what is moral, and what is amoral. Likewise, I think that it's important that we consider the things that we have under our control. That is, of course, a fundamental approach that we need to addressing anything that we might encounter in life. To what extent is this under control? And according to Seneca, in one of his letters, in fact, he writes that time is the only thing under our control. Perhaps we could also add our impulses, our actions, our mental reflection, tempus, inspectio, impetus, and actio. And that fundamentally applies this mathematical principle that I just discussed. We look at what we're approaching in our daily lives, we quantify them, we categorize them, and then we move on from there to make logical decisions. After all, if you don't define your variables and quantify them, you can't make any logical progress in math, and perhaps in a real way, one has to wonder how much more progress one can make in life by first defining the variables.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Untitled. I'm a third-year classics major here. The reason why I got involved in this activity is mainly because, one, I'm interested in the ideas of ancient philosophy, but also Stoicism is coming up a lot at my work. This semester I've been working with the American Enterprise Institute in Washington, D.C., and a lot of my fellow analysts have been suggesting to look into Stoicism, so when I got the email from Dr. Prince, I thought it would be a really good thing to partake in. Particularly, I was interested in comparing the modern idea of Stoicism. You know, a lot of it comes up in business books, which I feel like is mainly a misconception of the ancient rendition of it. And comparing that modern conception to the ancient idea, a lot of people that I've talked to at work about this, they like to stress the idea that Stoicism is more of a lack of emotion. But doing these exercises, I found is quite the opposite. It's more embracing the emotion and controlling it and using it to your benefit, not to your self-advantage, but in order to help make the community a better place. So that was my biggest takeaway from all of that. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rue. I'm a fourth-year philosopher. I wanted to learn about Stoicism because I am emotionally loud and sensitive, and I'm learning about rationality, about how to weigh different sides of things. I've been seeing patterns in my thinking that I could never see before, and when I did the emotion activity, all in like 2 minutes, maybe less, I saw probably 15 different emotions come, and while I was thinking from thought to thought, it was crazy. So I also want to be more resilient, because I think that's a good virtue to have. I think it's a virtue. It should be. And I want to see the bigger picture, because I've been able to do that better when I just stop and think about what's going on. And so I want to also keep my passion though. I was afraid that as a stoicist that I used to think that you had no emotion or you denied it, but it's more like you learn how to use it, and it makes life more clear, and that's why I like it.
Thank you so much. I think we have heard some of the same or similar ideas here, so I would like maybe to sum up everything in 4 images, if you allow me, that I think will probably encapsulate your experience and will explain what this is all about. So you're engaging in something that can be called a spiritual exercise, right? So it's a kind of disciplined way of changing your attitude towards life, right? And it has regularity, and it has a structure, and it has to take a course of time. So I think Seneca's one of the last works, the Letters, is a good document of how that looks like when you're writing, right? When you're using writing to actually express that experience. And he has this image that I wanted to share with you of dying wool. So it's not a process that instantaneously changes the color of the wool, but you need to do it repetitively, right? Over and over again until you actually reach the hue that you want, the new color. So this is why it's so important to actually engage regularly in this kind of exercise. The other thing is that Stoicism very often is explained, especially its approach to emotions, as being absolutely against emotions of any sort. That is not correct. Stoics divide emotions into negative and positive emotions. And so this process of repetitive reflection on your actions and how you go about them is actually a process of selecting positive emotions such as love, gratitude, friendship, right? And rejecting negative emotions such as fear, revenge, and so on. So there is a really fine difference there between kinds of emotions that we should be cultivating and fostering that will actually lead to our better life, and those that are confusing us and actually detrimental to us. Another thing that several of you mentioned was things that are in our control and things that are not in our control. That's a very important distinction in Stoicism. And again, Seneca has this image of the fortune assailing us constantly with things that we do not expect and do not want, right? And the whole point of a spiritual exercise is to fortify us against such blows of misfortune. There are things that we certainly cannot control and that we should not actually get anxious about. There's very little that we have under control, but it's very important and it's very precious. That's our virtue. So there are cardinal virtues that Stoics recognize that are really important for us, and they include wisdom and temperance, courage as well. And so these are the things, the traits that we can influence and that we can actually use as our orientation in life. So philosophy is very often described as a citadel, as a kind of way of defense, right? But it's also a weapon that we can use in life to make ourselves better. So that is an important image, and so is also image taken from medicine, where philosophy is actually very often represented, not just by Seneca and by Stoics, but by other Hellenistic schools as well, as a cure, as a kind of way to lead a healthy, mentally healthy life, as opposed to the state of the illness of the soul, which is what most people are actually suffering from. So I think these images maybe are good to keep in mind and to actually use to basically motivate ourselves to continue. And I do hope that you will actually take the Stoic week in November. Michael has taken it, but the rest of you have not. And so see how it works. It's a process that maybe begins now and it's not entirely clear, but it will stick with you, and you will find ways to actually stick to this plan for a long time. So I think we can maybe then conclude.
Could we ask a question?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Because what struck me about it is that all of what was covered had to do with ethics, and there was no reference to any theological tenets of Stoicism. So what I'm curious about are those not emphasized at all? Because you would think that the pantheistic, any variety of Stoic theology, if you look at it, from the beginnings all the way down to Marcus Aurelius, one would think that that would be something that would be attractive, in the modern age for the immanentistic theology. So I'm curious as to why nobody mentioned any theological issues, but only ethical. Is that the way it was? Is that the way that it was presented, and that's intentional, or?
Yeah, exactly. I think the closest.
Because we already have Christianity. I mean, is that the reason for that?
No, because probably we want to avoid any such association, right? So I think the closest thing. Did anyone do the view from above?
I was going to say, there was the exercise on community and how we, how our conception of community might also include not just our friends and our family, but also our society, and then further to be stewards of a planet. And I think that might play into your point of being theological or being.
Well, it does. Yeah. No, that's from Marcus Aurelius, definitely. It does extend into, but there was no. I didn't see any specific focus on that. So that no.
Can you write down the days, what you were focusing on, so community one day, and maybe Professor Commissar?
Monday was focused on emotions, so the exercise was list 3 events that you had an emotional response to. I believe it was, what did you feel and how did you react to it? Tuesday was resilience, so like you said earlier, what's under your control, what's not. Wednesday, I believe that was the friendship and family one. Thursday was nature, so
that could be
Yeah.
your theology.
Yeah, that is it.
and Friday was based on values, so what it takes to be good.
There was a question here.
I mean, first of all, I really appreciated hearing each one of your perspectives and your experiences, your stories about this. And from a medical humanities perspective, I'm very interested in this exercise, because what I sort of took away from you, the generality that I took away from you, is this was some sort of spiritual, that you would call it a spiritual exercise of sort. I think even for the mathematician, this sort of aesthetically resonating exercise, and was that a fairly accurate reading for you? That did this feel like a discipline or a practice, or something that has somehow become woven into the story of you in some ways, even though it only went on into your wellness?
I guess just what I would note is, I do think that kind of, just to go back to the previous question, I mean, it obviously is, I think, an important question that we ask ourselves. I mean, the distinction between, the philosophical, and then we move into, the spiritual or whatnot, or religion and whatnot, and obviously that's going to be, an important, all of these aspects. We have to, define what they all are for ourselves, we have to work our way to that, pursue that in our lives. And that said, and then how the interplay will be, in considering it as a spiritual exercise. I mean, yes, I would certainly say that, mentally speaking, it leads to the ability to move forward in a more rational way when you consider, to move forward in a rational way when you premeditate as to, what you may encounter in advance, and then contemplate what might be inside or outside your control. Just, on a sort of a cliche level, certainly, certain, spiritual traditions can take in, obviously, some aspects of this. I mean, you hear about the premeditatio and just on a cliche level, memento mori, much more associated with Christianity and myself and Catholics. So I mean, certainly I would say that you just got to, you've got to consider all the different levels on which you might have, interplay between, the spiritual, what might, the rational level, and of course that which in life is purely, physical, like, the just eating or drinking. And I mean, but obviously this is a, complicated matter that we all should reflect on, and we have an obligation, I think, to reflect on, in an intentional way in our lives, how we want to approach and interact with each of those areas.
I think I'll.
Yeah, I had a question for the philosophy majors. It's totally fine if this is not something that you've encountered in your coursework or such so far, so there's no particular pressure there, but it kind of occurred to me that Stoicism's emphasis on contemplating one's mortality could have a lot of connection to the existentialist strain of philosophy, particularly the Hegelian tradition, and especially Heidegger, the idea of kind of dying to be itself, right? Anyway, I was wondering if there were other connections that you had made with more contemporary philosophy in the coursework or reading that you've done, and yeah.
So, when you say contemporary, you mean like more modern philosophers?
Yeah, well, modern, I guess I'm thinking, post-Hegel,
Well, Nietzsche,
Hegel onward.
I think Nietzsche said altruism is not okay. We've been learning about that in our philosophy of psychology class. I'm trying to understand the rest of your question.
I mean, it's kind of shot in the dark. So whatever kind of thoughts you have about more, bringing Stoicism more into, post-Hegelian philosophy.
I think you can certainly read Camus as a kind of Stoic figure, especially in his myth of Sisyphus, where even though we're rolling up a rock, this pointless exercise, that there is meaning to it, that we find our own meaning in life, and that is the exercise of life. And so I think part of Stoicism, the reflection that it takes upon us to do is part of that, maybe that answers your question.
Yeah, understood, yeah.
And it was my fault because, well, the time, right? We ran out of time, so I had this session until 6 o'clock. So we'll summarize what you said. But thank you so much, Professor Rebecka, and also our moderators, Professor Kamsar, Professor Markovich, and of course our wonderful undergraduate students, historical participants, and our musicians. I guess they're not here.